Okay, so you were just traveling recently,
Yes.
and I think you took a red eye from Seattle to Knoxville. Is that right?
Yeah, so the red eye was Seattle to Denver, and then I connected to get to Knoxville. Yep.
Okay. Oh, that's tough.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to ask. Be, it's not really that hot of a take, but one of my hotter takes around traveling is that, and it doesn't really apply for like a for a red eye flight, but
Mhm.
my hot take is if a flight is under 3 hours, there's really no reason to recline your seat.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, get off my
Are you a
knees.
never recliner?
Yeah, I never recline my seat. Yeah, never.
Even if you're flying across country or
Yeah,
internationally?
it's not like it does that much, you know? You're getting like 2 inches back there. It does
Yeah.
basically nothing.
Are you a neck pillow guy?
I am a neck pillow guy. I've yet to find one that I really like, but I have one and it helps slightly with
Hmm.
falling asleep. But really you just got to do like the heavy dose of melatonin and try to
Yeah.
get some good sleep in there cuz okay, so I did a study abroad in the UK, and over there they it might be outlawed by now because this has been like 10 years since this
Hmm.
happened, but they had this stuff called night nurse,
Okay.
uh and it's like nighttime Benadryl on steroids basically. So I had some night nurse left over from my study abroad in the UK, and
Hmm.
I took that and I was just out the entire plane ride back, which was ideal. When you're going overseas, you definitely want to just be like sleeping the whole way.
Yeah. Do you not fall asleep on planes unless you are aided by some sort of medicine or drugs?
Yeah, it depends on the situation. So Hannah and I went to Italy last year, and we I did not sleep a whole lot either the way there or the way back. So I
Hmm.
just watched like my really long movies. Like I watched the like long version of Scenes from a Marriage, the Bergman movie,
Yeah.
like the version he made for television that's like 5 hours long. This is like when else am I gonna watch this? So I watched
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That's a
So
hilarious
that
plane movie.
yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah. Sitting next to my wife.
Yeah. I
Literally trapped in the seat
yeah.
watching Scenes from a Marriage.
Okay, this then brings up the question of what are your thoughts on plane movies? Are there specific movies for you that are designated to planes? I was
Ooh.
on a flight recently and I saw Lawrence of Arabia was an option to watch, and it was like there's no way that there is like any psycho on any Delta flight that is happening over the next 5 years. Like there is not a
Yeah.
single person who is going to sit down on that flight, no matter how long it is, and say, "Yep, this is how I want to finally consume Lawrence of Arabia." Or like
That's
Barry
really funny.
Lyndon was another option.
Barry Lyndon. Yeah, those are movies you want on probably a little bigger of a screen to be able to see well. You know, I enjoy watching movies on a big screen. I also enjoy just like watching movies however I can see them. I don't feel like the experience or the place I'm in really has a huge effect on how much I enjoy the movie. So I feel like I'm sort of down for anything. Like I'll just, download a bunch. I travel a lot for work, so I download a
Mhm.
bunch of movies on my phone. And then I don't pay for Wi-Fi, just watch the ones that I've downloaded. And I think I'm okay with that. I think I'm okay with watching movies on my phone. I know some people are
Wow.
like hardcore. I will never watch a movie on my phone.
I'm a little
But
surprised that you're a
yeah.
movie on the phone kind of guy.
I mean, just circumstantially because I like to watch a lot of movies. Um,
Hmm. And you
and
don't want to
some
be limited to the options that JetBlue is providing you.
Yeah, I don't, and then sometimes, I mean, sometimes they have the little screen in front of you, and sometimes it's like the United Wi-Fi thing, and then you're like watching on your phone anyway, or trying to cram a
Hmm.
laptop in there and be able to watch it. And so, you know, yeah, but either way, the screen is pretty small. And like
Yeah.
if I have my face close enough to the screen, then the screen's pretty big, you know?
Yeah, that's I guess that's a fair way to look at it.
Uh,
Um,
Television screen like 20 feet away or phone 3 inches away, basically the same,
yeah.
yeah, same
It's
size.
not like having a screen that close to your eyes is doing any damage to
No, no,
to
certainly not.
to your sight or to your brain or anything like that.
No, it's very good for me, very good for me.
So you would watch The Adventures of Robin Hood on your phone on a plane,
I
or do you
think it
not think
would
that this is
I think it
uh,
would play well on a plane. It's just a fun hang. It's a fun movie to watch. And yeah, I think I would watch it on a plane. I think I would.
nice? This I could see this. I'm very against watching movies on the phone. That's something that I don't think I'll ever
Mm,
be able to bring myself to. But I could see this being a solid plane movie on the little plane screen.
mm,
Maybe maybe on my laptop or an iPad if I traveled with an iPad,
yeah.
but I could see this being a good plane movie.
Will you
Well,
watch television on your phone? Like, what's your limit? Or YouTube videos, I'm sure that sort of thing you'll watch
um,
on your phone?
even like YouTube videos, I don't really watch on my phone.
Mm,
I think I want everything on like at least my laptop screen.
at least your laptop screen, at least that big. Okay.
Yeah.
I used to be that way. Hannah converted me to like just watch everything on your phone. So she brought me over to the dark side. Yeah.
I so living in New York, you will like always see people in the subways watching things on their phones, and I think the two craziest things that I've seen, one, I when that Transformers Beast Wars movie came out, I saw a
Mhm.
dude watching an illegal rip of that on his phone on like the 5 train, and I was like, "You know what, dude? Good for you." But the other day, I saw a woman playing Candy Crush while in the corner of her phone screen, she was watching Game of Thrones. And I was
Oh,
like,
that's
that has to
intense.
be the most like insane way to consume media. On the train, playing Candy Crush, and even in the not even your full iPhone being taken up by the images of Game of Thrones. It's relegated to the corner of the screen, smaller than Candy Crush. Like,
You've gotta do the
absolutely.
screen in through screen. Yeah, that's crazy. The only time that I've used that is when I, like, need to check something, like, you go on Letterboxd and check, "Who is that actor?" or whatever, and you
Mhm.
keep going, but then switch back to it. But, yeah, that's intense to be playing a game while, like
It was it was absolutely bonkers. But you know what? To each their own, I
some
guess.
people are just living life on a very high level.
Yeah, I'm not there yet. I'm still like, give me at least my TV screen and a dark room, and that's how I wanna watch a movie. But other folks, they're living in the future, and I'm trying to catch up. But
Yeah.
Brian, we are joined here today to talk about yet another essential movie, Screenagers. We're going to be talking the adventures of Robin Hood today, as you can tell by the episode title. If you can't tell by now, we are joined once again by the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Bryan Loomis is back on the Canon to chat with us yet again. Um, I would say, Brian, how are you doing? But I feel like we've we're
We've
so far
covered
past
that.
pleasantries at this point. We dove right in.
Yeah. Like the woman watching, Game of Thrones while playing Candy Crush, you know? We just
Yeah.
dive right in. Public place, doesn't matter.
We'll keep coming back to this woman throughout the episode,
You
I'm
have
sure.
your content and media to consume, you gotta get through it. Those levels of
Yeah.
Candy Crush aren't gonna beat themselves.
Hopefully someone consumes this podcast in its audio visual form in a screen within a screen while they're playing Candy Crush or some other, you know,
Mm.
online phone game or
That would
something.
be okay. You know, when what rubs me the wrong way is when people call like movies I like content. And I'm like, that's not content. Get that out of here. But
Yeah.
like if people call my podcast content, it's like, yeah, that's fair. You know?
Yeah.
It's content. It's whatever.
Yeah. We try to stay
So
away from the C word. I think what we do is art. I think your podcast
well, thank you.
is artful in the way that you guys do it. Um, you know, I'm sure our listeners here, they are well aware of the What a Picture podcast, but just in case there's anyone listening who's not familiar, you want to give us a quick little rundown of what it is that you do over at your very artful um, podcast that is not the C word.
Non C word
Yeah.
podcast. So we are What a Picture. I host it with my wife Hannah, who made a brief appearance here over my shoulder for those watching on video. Um, we are covering a mix of movies, but mostly new releases. We just covered Black Bag. We're about to record an episode on The Shrouds, David Cronenberg's new movie. So I'm very excited about that. And then we cover some other, you know, Oscar Best Picture winners in between and things. So we've been doing it for a little over 2 years, and we really love just keeping up with things, talking about what makes a great film great. So yeah, that's what we're up
Amazing.
to. Yeah.
I love it. It is a great show. If anyone is listening to this and has for some reason not yet listened to What a Picture, please go do that. You won't be disappointed. It's a very good show, very good conversations, very thoughtful, insightful conversations about good movies, and a good hang with two good people. So I
Yeah.
highly recommend. Brian, we are, like I said before, here today to talk about The Adventures of Robin Hood, a great movie, an essential movie, a movie that I had not seen or was like at all familiar with before going through the list of movies within the canon, which has kind of been a theme in season 5 of this show. We're talking about a lot of movies that I haven't seen, so it's been really interesting. Just getting other people to come on and like give me their thoughts about why these movies are essential, and movies that like I have had no experience with. So with this movie in particular, I assume that you've seen it before, and that's why you picked it. But when did you first see it? When did you come across it? What sort of like initially drew you to this movie? Why was it something that you were like, oh yeah, I would be down to talk about this movie in particular?
Yeah, I was when you sent out the list of movies, I was a little surprised that it was on the canon. It does fit, you know, I think the theme, I know, you know, we talked on the last episode that I was on that y'all have a lot of Rob Reiner movies on the list, and this is
Mhm.
very much like fitting the Princess Bride like vibe of just like fun swashbuckling hang. So I think it does fit in with the type of movies that you are highlighting on the canon, but maybe is a little lesser seen or lesser heard of. And so I was like, oh, I love that one. That would be a really fun one to come talk about. Um, I first watched this movie when I was doing a very psycho thing in the early days of Blue Sky. I was doing this thing called the Movie Years Project, is what I called it. So I'd use a random
Yes.
number generator to pick a year between 1900 and I think 2023 was the latest one that I did. And so I and then I would ask for recommendations on Blue Sky, and the
Mhm.
psychos over there have seen so many movies, so they'd give me like for every year, some people would have like 10 to 15 recommendations of things I needed to
Mhm.
check out. So I didn't watch everything that was recommended, but I tried to whittle it down to, you know, 5 movies, maybe a little more for bigger years, maybe up to like 10, or some of them got up to like 15 because I was like, I can't choose.
Yeah.
But I watched this as a part of that project when I got to 1938. And for the old Hollywood years, there's just a lot of movies that are sort of the same, you know? So
Mm,
if
yeah.
if I got on a run where I got like 3 or 4 old Hollywood years in a row, you'd just be like watching a lot of the same sort of stuff over and over again. And so the ones that pop, I really remember. And this one just for how fun it is, how vibrant it is, and just sort of like it doesn't have a lot of punchlines or laugh lines, but it's just like really fun and very much not meant to be taken very seriously. The stunts and throwing candles and flipping tables sort of stuff is just it's really a really really fun movie, and so it's just like very watchable and a movie that I was eager to revisit.
Yeah, that's so I'm interested to get your perspective because you have done this project where you were, sort of exposing yourself to a lot of movies that were coming out, maybe, obviously other movies within this year, but also movies that were coming out around the same time. So like you having that sort of background to understand like what it is specifically about this movie that makes it kind of like pop out or stand out amongst those others
Oh yeah.
will be really good. Good to know because I was watching it and I was like, this is so much fun. This is like just such a easy, breezy, enjoyable time watching a movie. Like I can totally get why this just like charmed so many people. It's charming the hell out of me right now while I'm watching it.
Hmm.
But I don't have that sort of like context that you have. So it will be cool to as we like dig deeper into the movie, sort of explore, you know, what it is specifically about this one that makes it stand out. So in this movie year project, you were only watching movies that were new to you, right? Like no rewatches, right?
Yeah, I'd throw in a rewatch occasionally, but the rule was at least 5 new to me movies in the year. So, yeah, it was mostly about exposing myself to more of film history. Yeah.
Cool. So this was one of those movies that was
Yes.
new to you at
I'd
the
never
at the
seen it
time of
before.
watching.
Yes.
Um so okay, so we've sort of outlined like generally how this movie is very fun. Um from like what it was that you were watching, were there a lot of like similar adventure movies that you were coming across, similar sort of like swashbuckling kind of tales that you were coming across? Because I think for me, like my knowledge of the swashbuckling genre is very, very, very limited. It's like
Yeah.
The Princess Bride and maybe that's it.
Yeah.
like does the Goonies count? Although I've never seen the
Sure.
Goonies all the way
Yeah.
through.
I did think of, like, Labyrinth too as just sorta
Mhm.
like a fun hang, or I mean, you could put, like, Indiana Jones in there if you wanted. Of These are just, like, fun, solid adventure movies that, they're not, like, dour dramas. They're having a lot of fun with their premises and just sort of a good time. So I do agree that I don't feel like we get a whole lot of these types of movies. Um, and I think it might just be because it's hard to do it well, to have like this level of earnestness where it's not
Mhm.
really, uh, it's sort of a comedy, but not really a laugh out loud comedy. It's more just like a fun adventure movie that you're yeah, just um along for the ride in a way. So it's not like it's like setting these huge stakes that you're like
Mhm.
really invested in the characters or the drama or the interpersonal relationship. Like all of that stuff is there's external and internal conflicts and stuff, but it's all just, it's a very like easy to watch, and you're not, wondering what's going to happen next at any point, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it's like a pleasant movie to be around. It's a pleasant movie to be in the presence of,
Yeah,
which
exactly.
there are a lot of movies that are very enjoyable to watch, but don't have that level of, it's like it like automatically makes you super comfortable being in its presence, and like it invites you in this really warm way.
Yeah,
It's
maybe what it is there are a lot of movies that are trying to make you laugh, but not as many movies that are trying to make you just like grin the whole time or smile and like have a good time while you're watching it. Um, we've gotten sort of away from that in some of the stuff that's been released, and that's fine. There's lots of modes of being a good movie, but I do really enjoy this particular mode.
yeah. I think part of it is also the fact that our star, Errol Flynn, as Robin Hood, is one of the most charming acting performances like ever put to
Oh
screen.
yeah.
What do you think about him in the lead role as Robin Hood?
Yeah, so he's definitely got like the roguish quality that you're looking for in a character like this to sort of hold things together. Um, he's, you know, rebelling against Prince John and the ostensible government, but at no point is the viewer meant to think that he's like in the wrong. They make it very
Mhm.
clear like these people are corrupt and taking power unrightfully, and so you're always on his side. You're always rooting for him, and yeah, he's got just that. There are people who are great actors and there are people who are great movie stars. Errol Flynn is a
Mhm.
great movie star where just like his presence and charisma really bring something to this that has like this gravitas, even if it's like, he's not doing like Robert De Niro transformation sort of thing. It's just he's a movie star. He's Errol Flynn. You come to see Errol Flynn, not Errol Flynn transform into like a character or whatever. But it's just as important, and I think just as challenging to be, that charming and that
Yeah.
compelling on a regular basis. So yeah.
The way that he does the, like, over-exaggerated belly laugh whenever he finds something funny as Robin Hood is so amazing, and it kind of made me, miss, even though, we weren't around in the days of of classic Hollywood where, movie stars could really be movie stars, and we weren't so focused on, like naturalistic kind of acting performances. Like someone
Mhm.
could play Robin Hood in this sort of like big, broad, very charming, very, I don't want to say surface level, but like we're not like too worried about all of his like deepest inner motivations or whatever it is as a character. Like we can just watch him be a really cool, fun person to hang around. Which is, I mean, when you bring up Indiana Jones, and like that's kind of the quality that Harrison Ford brings to
Yeah.
that character. But yeah, man, Errol Flynn is just like absolutely crushing it. Like maybe we can get away from everyone wanting to be Daniel Day-Lewis, and maybe we should have more people trying to be Errol Flynn as Robin Hood.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like maybe Glenn Powell is on a little bit of a similar trajectory where he's a great actor and can bring it, but mostly he's taking like fun movie star type roles that I'm really enjoying sort of his run of movies recently where he's just being like a charming movie star in a couple of movies a year, and it's sort of great.
And that's amazing. It's great. I was thinking while watching this, Errol Flynn does look a little bit like Glenn Powell, or
A
Glenn
little
Powell looks a
bit,
little bit.
a
They
little bit.
they kind of look like each other. Um, do we want to talk about this as a translation of the like actual Robin Hood story, which I realized while watching is one that I am not at all familiar with. Was it something that you were familiar with before watching this, or like had you seen other adaptations of the Robin Hood story, or was this
Yeah.
kind of like your first, way into that story?
I think my first exposure to the Robin Hood story was, Robin Hood Men in Tights, the Mel Brooks
Mhm.
movie.
Of course.
So that was a big one, um, and then, there was that awful 2010 Robin Hood movie. It's been a really rough run of Robin Hood movies
Is that the Russell Crowe
since
one?
this one. Yeah, that's the Russell Crowe one.
Is that
Yes.
Guy Ritchie?
No, I think it's Ridley Scott, but in a run of really awful Ridley Scott movies. He made some real stinkers around that time. Yeah,
Based
really
on the
tough.
poster alone, it looks like it wants to be a very serious, gritty, like reimagining of
Yeah,
the story, which is the complete opposite of this one. And
yeah,
it's interesting where this one totally succeeds because it's like it's light, it's fun, it's very easygoing. I don't need a dark, serious Robin Hood tale. That's no fun.
yeah. But that's what they were doing with all of the like big franchise properties. Like superhero movies used to be just goofy ass movies, 70s,
Yeah.
80s, and 90s. Got like the bat nipples and, running around. Jack Nicholson like raiding an art gallery with yeah. So anyway, so you had that, the Bond movies got like gritty and serious. And so I guess they decided that they had to do that with Robin Hood too. But and where you can like is superhero movies can be more like based in reality, and like that mode of movie is good and has been really successful. I just don't know that you can do that so much with Robin Hood, or that I'm that interested in seeing it done that way, because it is sort of a silly story at the root of it.
He's this larger than life. There's like a whole mythology around Robin Hood, right? We're no longer, or really like we probably haven't been for years and years, for generations at this point, maybe a couple hundred years. Like we have not been interested in Robin Hood, the actual person. We're more so interested in Robin Hood as like an idea. And this movie is totally playing into that. Robin Hood as mythology, this larger
Hmm.
than life kind of figure. Yes, we get all of the like beats. We get all the characters, him rounding up his merry crew and all of that, their relationship
Hmm.
to the throne, and how it is that they were, trying to get back at their oppressors and stuff. But like we don't need like the actual historically accurate vision of what this guy was doing.
Yeah.
Russell Crowe and Ridley Scott.
I mean, it's Robin Hood is like a rogue tale. If you know anything about Robin Hood, it's probably that he robs from the rich and gives to the poor. So like, there's this aspect of he's breaking the law, but for the right reasons, or he's doing something that's just even in the face of it being against the law. Um, so there's this like roguish quality that does make it sort of like fun and desirable, of like, oh, I sort of want to be this guy of, he's breaking all the rules and doing the right thing as a result.
he's he's like one of the earliest versions of fully like democratizing the
Hmm.
the material goods of the people around him, like in a weird way. Like he's like kind of like our first socialist, where
Yeah.
he's like redistributing wealth in a way that like benefits the poor. But with all that, like, right, yeah, like if you know nothing about Robin Hood, you at least know takes from the rich to give to the poor. That was
Hmm.
what I was coming in with. That was all that I
Yeah.
knew. And you're like, yeah, that's an idea that like we can all totally get behind. Wouldn't that be fun? You're with your boys, you're with Friar Tuck and Little John, and Will is there, and you guys are hiding out in the forest, and you see a rich guy, and you take some of his money, and then you give it to like the nice poor lady down the road or whatever.
Hmm.
That sounds great. That's something that we can all get behind. And this movie does it and presents it again in a way where it's you can we can kind of all see ourselves within the Robin Hood character, within
Hmm.
his merry band of of what are they, robbers or whatever.
Rebels.
The
Yeah.
rebel, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing with that I was thinking is like I could see how this movie has inspired so much just like play amongst kids for generations. You know, I don't know if you felt this way, but like, could you picture yourself when you were like 8 or 9 watching this movie, catching this movie on like Turner Classic Movies, and then going outside with your friends and like staff fighting by the pond the way that they do in this movie, or is that
Oh,
just me?
totally. No, that was a big part of my childhood is, playing and in this way and um, you know, making up characters that we were going to be or taking things that we had seen from film or television and playing in that way. So it's just a playful movie that sort of lends itself to that sort of thing.
I think that was the other big thing that um, that really stood out to me was like I think this movie sort of one Robin Hood, very easy character for all of us to identify with. Two, the kind of play that's going on here, it like ignites this childlike wonder in all of us, which is again going to your point of like you're grinning the whole time. It's not necessarily making you like laugh out loud, but it is so enjoyable that you just want to smile the whole time that you're with it. And I think part of that is because it ignites that childlike wonder within all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the way that they do the stunts is very much just like what if you were a child, what you'd imagine when you're playing of like we're kicking over tables, we're throwing chairs at each other, we're running out the gate and then tricking the guard to close the gate on the people that are chasing us, and so
We're
all of
jumping
that
out of
sort of stuff.
trees.
Yeah. And then there's the one where it's a lot of Robin Hood closing the gates on the people who are trying to catch him and them being like, oh, we can't get past this gate now. So happens 2 or 3 times. But another one where he like cuts a rope and then scales over the gate while the rope is like lowering it. That one is
Yeah,
cool. That's
that
that's
one was sick.
one of the
Yeah.
stunts that stood out for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember like while watching that stunt, obviously the modern mind goes to um the mother of movie stuntman Tom Cruise. And I was like, a young Tom Cruise must have seen this and he was like, I know what I want to do when I grow up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think another thing that really, goes to that igniting of childlike wonder, making the movie such a pleasant viewing experience and thing to be in the presence of is the use of color, which going back to your movie watching project where you're watching a lot of movies from this year and around this time, I think you can really speak to. Um, but what do you have for us on the way that color is used in this movie and sort of like why it's I don't know if it's fully revolutionary, but it is
Mhm.
kind of a big deal.
Yeah, so this would be 1 year before The Wizard of Oz, which would be the other big like Technicolor, like, oh wow, this is like beautiful and vibrant sort of thing. Um, color's been around in movies since they've been a thing. What they used to do, um, is for like the Méliès like little silent things, they'd paint each
Mhm.
individual strip of film. It's crazy, like the
Absolutely
amount of
nuts.
time that would take.
Even for like
Um,
an 8-minute film.
yeah. Yeah, every single one. So you've got that, but that is like a distinct visual style. And then you've got these Technicolor movies. It was expensive to do, so they didn't do it a whole lot unless they felt that the movie really needed it. And you can see in a movie like this or The Wizard of Oz how the color is really serving the movie and making it more of a spectacle that would be like, because it's all about, box office draw at this point of like, okay, we can make black and white movies for cheaper. What is the benefit that we're getting out of making this a color movie instead? How is that going to make more money as a result? um but with the Technicolor, it doesn't quite look like real life.
Mhm.
It's like more vibrant, the colors are brighter and more distinct. And so you get this sort of mythical quality to it, and it's just a joy to look at. Even like the Claude Rains hair, I think it's Claude Rains hair, is just like so red, as like
Mhm.
no hair has ever been, and no hair has ever looked like that before. So that was one of the things that stood out to me. But all of the, greens, the browns, it's just like this. It's become like this sort of standard medieval color palette, I think in part because of this film, is like this is how we think of um the romanticized like medieval colors and the way, the world looked back then in our minds. So yeah, it's
Which
just
is super
really
interesting.
really neat. Yeah. Yeah.
Those times were probably a bit grayer, a bit darker than maybe how we think of them. And it is interesting to think that this movie plays such a big role in how it is that we understand sort of like the colors and style of that time. I don't know if you've ever been to one of those medieval times shows,
I
but
yeah, I've been to like a yeah, something similar. Yep.
all of the like very bright, very colorful productions. And while I was watching this, I was like, oh yeah, they're also obviously pulling a lot from this movie. But going back to one of the other things that you were saying about how the Technicolor sort of like technology, it gives us movies that don't look like real life,
Mhm.
which again, for the Robin Hood character, for the tale of Robin Hood, this larger than life figure, these larger than life stories, if it is presented in a way that is darker, grittier, maybe closer to historical fact, like the Ridley Scott Russell Crowe version, um,
Mhm.
it then the part of that, like, it loses its juice. So I think the
Yeah.
fun sort of nature of the adventures with the way that it's shot really, really do go hand in hand in terms of how it is that we enjoy this. I think there was a version that was released in black and white. Have you seen it? Are you familiar with it? How do you think this movie would have read if it were initially released in black and white instead of color?
That's interesting. I can't even picture this movie in black and white, and I would watch like a scene, but then I feel like I would be like, okay, enough of that. I want my colors back, because it
Yeah.
is like everything about this with the Technicolor, um the the stunts, the silliness, it's all just, it's creating this form of escapism that is
Mhm.
really, compelling and just a fun world to be in. And so I think you'd lose some of that if it was in black and white, but maybe it'd work, you know. There
Yeah.
are great movies in black and white.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But this movie, I think it still would be pretty good, but I think the color goes such a long way in helping us sort of understand everything it is that this movie is trying to communicate about Robin Hood, and just like the goal of like exciting you being that kind of escapism. This comes out in 38. We're like still pretty deep in depression times. People are
Mhm.
not having fun. And then you have this story about this dude who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. And there's a lot of poor Americans going to movies, and they're like, wow, like, look at this bright, lovely land where this dude is looking out for people like us. Like, I feel like this movie came out at the perfect time. based on other movies that you were watching around this time, like what kind of like other stories were people telling? Like what were some of the other movies that were maybe resonating with audiences? Why do you think that this one maybe resonated a little bit more than some of the other movies that were coming out around this time, especially as like a form of escapism, like you were saying?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, you've got like in a similar vein, you've got like some of the Marx Brothers stuff in the 30s leading into this. And so they're doing some like satire making fun of the rich or of countries in war like in Duck Soup. You've got I don't know. So the movies that you do have some like dour social drama sort of stuff that maybe like people aren't really wanting to go and see their exact lives projected back at them at this
Yeah.
time. Like a little bit of escapism can be nice when you're going through it. And so, yeah, I think that that's probably what was appealing about this movie is that, like you said, it's got a little bit of like a message that would resonate in terms of like rooting for the underdog, rooting against corruption, but you're also not like confronted with your own reality in this movie in a way. So it walks that line in a way that I think would be pretty compelling to a 30s viewer, if I had to guess.
Yeah, I think as like a form of escapism, this obviously like 1000% works. And then also it's like, again, like you were saying, there's like not a lot of movies coming out in color around this time. So like it also provides this sort of like pretty grand, cool vision on screen that is maybe like a bit feels a bit bigger, feels a bit bolder than some of the other things that people are used to around this time. This is going to be a weird transition, but we spoke a bit about Errol Flynn and what makes him so great as Robin Hood. Um, in my research, I'm not sure if you saw this or were aware, but I guess it was originally supposed to star James Cagney as Robin Hood,
Oh.
but either I'm forgetting the reasons for why he ended up leaving the project. Um, but there's also, you know, a lot about the supporting cast and how these were like some of like the best players that Warner Brothers as a studio had under contract. Again, as someone who is, I think, a bit more familiar with like this era of filmmaking than I am, were you familiar with some of the other names and faces in this movie and sort of like what it was specifically that they were bringing to their roles and like the movie more generally?
Yeah, so a couple of them that that are familiar. So Olivia de Havilland is, man, I'm awful at pronouncing people's names, but she is a pretty big leading lady around this time. I really like The Heiress is a William Wyler movie that's a lot more, you know, dramatic. Um, and she's very good in that as well. So I had sort of seen that before. And then, of course, you know, Claude Rains, who plays Prince John, is also the titular Invisible Man. Is he's in Casablanca, and so he does show up in a lot of other stuff and was sort of more of a character actor, but very good in any role that he gets himself into. So yeah, some of it is a good sort of supporting cast. And then some of the people that, you know, I'd not really uh seen in other things or seen in much else, or who at
Mhm.
least didn't stick out in the other things I had seen, like Una O'Connor, who plays B. is just so
Yeah.
delightful, or Bess,
Yeah, she's
rather,
amazing. Yeah.
uh, in this movie. She's an absolute delight in this movie, and now makes me wanna go back and rewatch some of the other movies that I've seen her in, and see if I could place her a little bit better. But yeah, she it looks like she's in a bunch of stuff in the 30s here that I just pulled up that I've seen, so I'll have to go back through and watch for her a little more closely because she is so much fun.
She's
Like, every
great.
facial expression is wonderful.
When she says, "I've had the band 5 times," like talking about, like, a wedding band, I don't know why that line absolutely cracked me up. I there are
Oh,
some moments, there are a few brief moments of, like, laugh out loud humor in
there
this,
are, yeah,
but I don't know
yeah.
how intentional it is. That might just be us, watching it with through the lens of, like, 2025 humor, that was not necessarily
I've
intentional
got
in
it.
38.
Yeah, I mean, there is sort of an aspect of sometimes when you can watch older movies, things can be unintentionally funny. I've gotta believe that, like, most of this stuff, like, they're sorta in on the joke of, like, how fun and funny this is and, just not taking themselves too seriously, but could be that they were, trying to make that gritty, realistic drama, and this is what they came up with,
This is
so, yeah.
this is what we ended up getting. A solid, like, 3 minutes of fat jokes for Friar Tuck. Just
Yeah.
amazing. Like,
Uh,
that felt like a Judd Apatow movie, where it's just like, "Okay, and now everyone's gonna ad lib lines about, like, how fat Jonah Hill is or something."
yeah. Poor guy. Yeah.
Uh, do you do you have a favorite character with that in mind?
Ooh, okay. Favorite character here. So, well, Bess, I've already mentioned. She'd probably be up there for sure. I do like uh Friar Tuck as well. Great intro to a lot of these characters, but Friar Tuck as
Mhm.
well, sitting next to that or sleeping next to his hunk of meat.
Yeah.
That's
What
great.
do you call it? A mutton joint?
Mutton joint. Yeah. I could go for a mutton joint,
Yeah.
right about now, but I also like, Will Scarlet, who's sorta like the sidekick,
Mhm.
running alongside Robin Hood and just providing little witticisms when needed. He doesn't get,
Yeah.
like, a proper intro or a whole lot to do other than just, like, being around and bouncing lines off of Robin Hood, but I like him as well. Yep.
A lot ton of great character intros. Is it Little John who he fights, on the, like, the little
Yeah.
tree stump next to the pond or by the
That
creek?
one's Little John.
Great
You got
intro.
Friar Tuck, great intro. Even, like, Much, who, you get he's killed the deer, and then Robin Hood sweeps in and saves him. That's pretty fun, and then I love in the next scene, like, Errol Flynn's just got, like, the big, very fake deer
Yeah.
carcass over his shoulders. It's like this fake stuffed deer that he's just, like, hauling around and gonna throw in the middle of this, hall where they're all feasting. So some great, like, sight gags like that as well,
But
so
a great scene. A very, very, very fun little fight scene. What Why do we not get more swashbuckling movies? Because I was watching this and I was like, "Where has this been my whole life? Like, why am I not
no.
watching movies with, dudes in tight pants sword fighting?" This seems like a very fun way to spend my time.
It is very fun. It is very fun. I also love, speaking of that scene, the dude I think it's the guy is supposed to be the sheriff of Nottingham, but I sorta
Mhm.
missed who it was. But it's just whatever dude is hanging around, Prince John and, Sir Guy and is, like, constantly making excuses for why he didn't catch or fight Robin Hood.
Yeah.
That's always a good time. Just like this guy
Oh,
making all of the excuses in the world for, "Oh, well, I would have gotten him if not for," whatever.
the the idea that there's this sheriff of Nottingham and Robin Hood is very clearly an outlaw. He's referred to as an outlaw all throughout the movie. Is the original tale of Robin Hood a just like British version of the cowboy stories that we tell within the American Western? Is this just a British Western, even though
I
it's an American production? But is it kind of it shares a lot of the same like elements
yeah.
besides taking place in the Old West.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have like the uh struggle for power where the government is not very settled, there's a lot of fighting going on and unrest. You have sort of this groundwork, but it is very much, yeah, that Western uh formula where you've got sort of the good outlaw who comes into town and takes the lady away from the I mean, you've even got a sheriff, sheriff of
Yeah.
Nottingham. So
We
yeah, same sort
we've
of
got
thing.
a sheriff. We've got an incompetent, unsettled government. And we've got our outlaw who comes in and saves the day. We've got good adventure. We've got horseback riding. We're just missing a couple of six shooters.
Yeah. And you've also got like the archery competition, which sort of could be a stand-in for like a shootout or a shooting competition or whatever. So yeah, same sort of thing.
Yeah. Is there I'm just jumping all over the place now. Is there a favorite set piece that you have in this movie in terms of like some of the bigger action
Ooh,
sequences that are going on?
that's a good question because I feel like this movie is very episodic. Like
Mhm.
you could take this and it wouldn't be a stretch to make it like a 4-part miniseries where, oh, now Robin Hood's gonna invade all of the like confrontations with Prince John are sort of the episodes, so to speak.
Mhm.
um, I do really like that archery one. I like how poorly he's disguised.
Yeah.
That always cracks me up. And yeah, sort of winning the favor of the maiden. Um I really like the getting the gang together. I mean, you've got a lot of things that are formulas or have become formulas since of how you make a movie like this, and they all really pop here. So I'd say the archery, the getting the gang together, and then that first dinner scene confrontation are probably the best of the bunch here.
Yeah, the dinner scene confrontation is great. That's and it comes so early in the movie that you're like, "Oh, this is the kind of fun that we're going to be having all
Yeah.
throughout this movie." And then it's just yeah, like you said, just episodic, sort of like relentless fun, you know, boom, like one sort of vignette after another of just like, "Oh, here's another moment of Robin Hood just like gallivanting around town with his buddies, getting into all sorts of trouble, and you're gonna have a great time with them." um yeah, the uh, there's a bit of western in this, but then there is also a bit of like Game of Thrones, House of Cards style, like, politicking in, like, the dumbest way possible. Like, the Prince John character is so bad at how he goes about it, but it is very funny. What did you think of, like, that whole aspect of the story in the movie?
Yeah, so he's doing this like power grab thing that's very clearly doomed to fail because his brother is like coming back from the Crusades. I think he's sort of like trying to kill his brother as well so that he can take power. But yeah, it is just sort of like a bad plan, a bad scheme that's like
Yeah.
not going well because he fails to win over like the hearts and minds that he needs. There is a little bit of like uh I'm willing to excuse it because I'm having a good time, but the like, oh, King Richard is like the hero of the people who will be is like, he's still a monarch. Like this
Yeah.
isn't.
Well, I found that kind of interesting because, like, at the end of the day, like Robin Hood as a character and as a story, right? It's about this outlaw who, again, is doing something that we can all see as noble. He's taking from the rich and giving to the poor. But like at the end of the day, he's not really like this. Like he's not like a revolutionary figure. Like
Mhm.
he's not like there to like completely overthrow the monarchy in the way that like the 13 US colonies did a couple
Yeah.
100 years later, but he's like he's very much so aligned with the status quo. He just doesn't like when it is like a gross overreach of power, which I found to be kind of interesting. And again, not to like get too much into like or try to get too much into the psyche of 1938 moviegoers, but I could see where that is something that like people like, where it's still like it's still within the status quo. It's just like don't go beyond what is like acceptable. Don't have it be this like super gross overreach of power. Don't be a Prince John where it's like, okay, buddy, like you've obviously gotten too far. As opposed to King Richard, where it's like maybe he is going too far, and like maybe like we shouldn't idolize kings at the end of the day, but like at least he's a good king.
Yeah, he gets his moment there at the end where he is disguised and then reveals himself as King Richard and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not the type of movie that you really want to overthink. Um it's just, it is, I think, coloring within the lines of um wanting Robin Hood to be a character that audiences of this time will feel okay with identifying with. This was before like the anti-hero sort of thing, so you've got to make him like clearly a good person and someone that audiences will want to root for
Hmm.
in that way. And so having like a, oh well, it's not for me, I'm loyal to the true king, and we're going to restore power, of like the humility there, the um lack of ambition, I guess, of just like wanting the rightful order to be restored, I think is appealing. And then Lady Marian is sort of the audience's stand-in for like getting on Robin Hood's side. Of she starts out thinking that he's a bad person, and then he sort of wins her over through showing her like, no, this isn't about me. There's who are the two groups, the Saxons and
Yeah,
the
and the
other
Normans.
ones, Normans. Yeah,
Yeah.
Saxons and the Normans, all of those, the kids in the latest season of the White Lotus. Yeah, the Lachlan's too. Yeah. The
I
Lachlan's were
haven't
down
watched it.
south.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you haven't watched it? Oh,
No.
okay. This is very rich people kid names. One of the kids'
Yeah.
names is Saxon
Is that's a
in the
good
last.
rich kid
Yeah,
name. Yeah, as
it's
is
a
Norman.
very, yeah,
Yeah.
very rich kid name. But anyway, you've got like, okay, there's this like unjust exploitation of one people group against another that
Mhm.
we want to be against. And then he sort of wins over Lady Marian just by showing that his cause is right and noble. Um, so yeah.
The well, okay. There are a few different directions that I'm contemplating taking us in right
All
now.
right.
Um, the production of this, right?
Yeah.
We talk about how like effortless it is to sort of like be with this movie and to watch this movie and to experience this movie and sort of like let it wash over you. But if you take like 2 seconds to think, like they've got a ton of extras. They're shooting this with really expensive technology, that like it must be super hard to like get these like giant cameras on the studio sets and all of that, and then like how are we going to cut this all together? You've got big sets and costumes that need to look right on that colored, film, and all that stuff. Like, do you have any sort of knowledge about sort of what the production of this movie was like? Because I assume that it must have been a massive, massive undertaking, despite how effortless the movie sort of feels as a viewer.
Yeah, it does seem like, it looking here, its budget was $2 million, which was like a massive
Hmm.
sum at this time for a movie. You've got, like we've said, like several set pieces and large groups of people, lots of costumes. Um so there's definitely a lot that goes into this, and you can sort of like see all of the effort and the big production value in what they're doing. So I think if you're watching this maybe with modern eyes, it doesn't seem quite as impressive of where movies have gotten in terms of budget and spectacle now, but it certainly at the time would have been pretty astounding, I think.
Yeah, it still feels like spectacle to me, in every sense of the word. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, kind of on the production side and more, not so much like the film itself, but like the uh, story behind the movie, is everything with the composer, um, Eric Wolfgang Korngold. I'm sure I butchered that. I just made it extreme. Gave it the most like Anglo pronunciation possible. Um, but are you familiar with like his story and like how he came to this, and also what are your thoughts on the score? Because this is certainly a score for all time.
Yeah, I'm not super familiar with his story, so I'd love to hear. But the score itself is that big sort of like romantic, sweeping, with a little bit of like it does feel like of its time in a way where it's orchestral and bringing in sort of some of the the types of things that maybe would have been composed around this time, or it just has that feel of like, yes, this is right for the time in which it's set, but
Hmm.
also, big a big production and something befitting like a modern 1930s movie.
Yeah, very exciting score. I feel like a score that has been like used as inspiration for scores for like tons of action and adventure movies, in terms of like, when certain notes are being hit, when the action is rising, kind of like how the music is moving behind the movie. I feel like I don't, again, I don't have enough knowledge to like say this with any certainty, but it feels like something that composers for the next 80 or so years were pulling from. My very limited knowledge of the composer, based on some background reading that I did, is Korngold was an Austrian uh, opera composer, and Warner Bros. They were like begging him to come over to the States to like work on some film scores and like music for films for them, and he was like kind of reluctant. They eventually convinced him to come over to like meet with them, to like maybe potentially, I think, work on this movie. And um he was an Austrian Jew. He left Austria to like come to the States for like a meeting like a month before um Germany annexed Austria,
Mm.
and he was then not able to go back home. So while he was here in the States, and he was like, well, things are sort of screwed for me back home, I guess I will, apply my genius opera composing skills to your Robin Hood movie, and um, gave them this brilliant score. He had worked on some other movies for Warner Brothers previously, I think, and there was a film score that he had worked on that won an Oscar like the year prior or something, and it was given to the music supervisor, and
Mm.
scores were always like credited to multiple people and not just the composer. And this guy was like, that's total disrespect to me. I am composing this music. I deserve the credit for it. And he like changed the way like with this movie, the way that film scores are credited to composers. So I hope I didn't butcher that, but that is my understanding of like what it is that that Korngold and like the score specifically meant for like the rest of film scores going forward, which is pretty wild.
That's pretty incredible. Yeah, if I were up for any awards, which I am not, but if I were, I would like to not only receive the award, but change the way in which the award is given out. That sounds pretty good.
That's the best way to win an award
Yeah.
is, but like I mean, it's not like wide knowledge that that he was, the driving force behind, why Ludwig Göransson is, and Hans Zimmer and John Williams, receive Oscars and
Yeah.
awards the way that they do today. Um, so with that last bit about the score and like everything that we've been talking about with this movie, there are like so many ways that this movie is clearly sort of like the groundwork for a lot of things that have come since. But
Mhm.
I feel like it's not considered in, like the pantheon of in terms of like film history of like being one of the most influential movies of all time. But Brian, would you say that this is like it seems like a lot of things are drawing from the formula that's laid out here?
Yeah, I think because you've got because this is coming rather early in the sound era, um, it is laying the groundwork for a sort of adventure epic that um, maybe not as many people have seen this, but they've certainly seen movies by people who have seen this of like this is influencing Spielberg and his, run of great adventure movies. And there's obviously, I don't know how you could see this and not think it was a giant influence on The Princess Bride, just in
Yeah.
the way that it's like this taking the exact aesthetic of this movie and applying it with more, laugh lines and making it sort of uh a different it's a different thing, but it is like aesthetically just pulling so much from this sort of thing. So yeah, I think absolutely it's a hugely influential movie.
Yeah, it's just weird that it's I'm sure in certain circles it is, but it doesn't feel like it has like risen to the level that I think it deserves. We
Yeah.
talk about like gathering. It lays a lot of the groundwork for gathering the team and things like that in terms of like how adventure movies move, in terms of how we use color within cinema, in terms of how films are composed and scored and stuff. Like
Yeah.
there's there's so much here, and we
Well, that's
should.
why we're doing God's work here on the Canon podcast and bringing this movie to the people's attention,
There we go,
because
Brian.
this is an essential movie. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. This is a movie that I would recommend to everyone.
Yeah.
Movie lover or not, young or old. Um this is all, yeah. While I was watching this, I was like my dad is like pushing 80 and he loves like
Mm.
a lot of like classic Hollywood kind of stuff. I was like he would, if he hasn't seen it, he would absolutely love this. But there's a good chance that
Would
he
love it.
caught this, on TV when he was like 10 years old or whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
and everyone
Yeah,
from
that's the way
him,
to
to your kids and everyone in between would love this movie. Did you watch this movie with your kids?
I did not. I should have, but I was like we were saying, I was on an airplane, so I was out of town for a little bit, so I didn't get the chance to. But yeah, that's I think they would have loved this. So yeah, at
Yeah,
some point, I've got a list on Letterboxd of like I got to show the kids these movies at some point. So yeah, I'll need to get it on there. Yep.
I love it. Amazing stuff. Thank you again for joining. It's always a pleasure having you on and chatting cinema with you. Did you have anything else about the Adventures of Robin Hood that you wanted to bring up that we didn't get to yet?
Yeah, I got one thing here. Did you So this is directed by Michael Curtiz, who also directed Casablanca, along with William Keighley, who also directed Adventures of Robin Hood, not Casablanca, which was just Curtiz. But that got me thinking about our friend of the pod, Taika Waititi's comments from years ago. Did you come across this when this was making the
N-
rounds? He was saying
no.
like no one remembers the director of Casablanca. He was actually trying to make a good point, but then he really put his foot in the mouth with the way he did it. It's like he's saying basically like I'm 47. I don't want to be obsessed with like leaving behind a legacy or being like a name brand director or whatever, which is admirable. I don't think
Mhm.
everyone like needs to be that. But then he goes and spouts off on like, what's the name of the director of Casablanca? Arguably one of the greatest films of all time. No one knows his name. It's just like, dude, you're just yeah. So
Oh
he
man.
could have been a little quiet about that. But Michael Curtiz, great director. He did this. He did Casablanca. Mildred Pierce is another great movie. So yeah, that got me thinking about this because it's like there's another one. There's another movie that the
There's another
director
great
of
movie.
Casablanca. He's not,
Yeah.
a one hit wonder or whatever.
No.
He's,
But he was kind of
making
known as
great
just
stuff.
like he was kind of like a Warner Brothers like workhorse kind of director.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
he
And
gave us a
similar to
couple classics.
definitely similar to our conversation about Rob Reiner, like the uniting thing in these movies is just knowing how to like create compelling characters and stories of like these are very different kinds of movies that he's making. But yeah, it's just he knows how to make a good movie, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, this movie, right? Like, you maybe watch it and you're like, this isn't the most exciting directing. But again, with the color technology that's being used, the amount of extras and everything, for all the sets, the set design and all of that stuff. Like, yes, the camera work is maybe not like that crazy, but they're using like some of the most insane cameras available to them.
Mhm.
So there's not going to be a lot of like exciting camera movement, beyond just like um really just like the utility of the camera of like capturing like what needs to be captured, but like
Mhm.
still all done really, really, really competently and like
Mhm.
maybe even like masterfully in terms of like
Yeah.
what it is that needs to be done from a director's standpoint, getting really exciting performances out of your actors, like
Mhm.
excels on all of those fronts. Taika
Yeah.
Waititi, he has anyone had a bigger fall from grace than that dude?
I mean, yeah,
I mean,
yes,
yeah,
there
people
are
have,
people,
but
but for like not really doing, as far as I know, anything like Me Too related or horribly wrong, he's just sort of put his foot in his mouth, and everybody's been like, "Ah, we're sort of done with you now," you
yeah,
know.
you used to be like fun
But
and charming, and we really enjoyed your movies, and then
now we're
you just
sort
got
of
really
annoyed by
annoying.
you,
Yeah.
but. Yeah, the directing here, it's not very like what you'd call athletic, like
Mhm.
filmmaking that draws attention to itself or that's like I'm going to show you what a great director I am by all of these things that I'm doing. Um but it is full of intention. It's just that the intention is in service of this like crowd pleasing escapism, but there are so many things that are aligned to create that. of like you've
Mhm.
got the larger than life Technicolor and just the stunt work that's not we're getting beyond realism in several ways to create this like fun uh aesthetic that's just consistent with all of those different choices, where if you think about it, you can see sort of the director intent of saying, I am making this and this and this choice to make this kind of movie, just not in the way that we typically think about directors like doing things.
Yeah, 100%. It's not the way that we think of like the modern like auteur director or whatever, but it is
Yeah.
all extremely like you said, intentional in terms of like what it's doing and how it's doing it. So, of extremely enjoyable movie watching experience. Cannot overstate that. If
Mm.
you are still listening to this and you have not seen The Adventures of Robin Hood, um, don't pause the episode at this point. Just listen all the way through and then go watch it. But
Yeah, absolutely.
definitely watch it. A ton of fun. Brian, what do you say? Should we do some recommendations for The Adventures of Robin Hood?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
You know what would have been a really funny bit now that I'm thinking about it? If we
Ooh.
had pretended at first that one of us did actually watch the Russell Crowe version, thinking that that was the one that was in the canon.
That would have been a good bet. Yeah.
Yeah, or like Robin Hood Men in Tights. You know,
Ooh, yeah. Hmm.
which I don't think I've ever seen or haven't seen all the
Yeah.
way through.
I
And then
think it's probably too late. I saw it probably in middle school, and so like that's the ideal time, and probably revisiting it I would have a good time, but now it's probably not going to be.
it's not gonna
It's
hit.
not actually good. It's like good when you're in middle school and a good
Yeah.
memory, you know.
And then what's the other one? There's is it Costner or is it Kevin Kline
I
who
have
has a
no
version?
idea.
One of the Kevins. One of the 90s Kevins.
Well, of course there's the animated one too.
Oh, yes. Which I also haven't seen. Again,
No, I've not seen it.
I have not been a Robin Hood guy in my past. Sorry, I'm trying to awkwardly
That is totally fine.
plug in my charger to my computer. Um, I thought I'd be able to do it in a slick way where it didn't look like I was doing something, but um, then I started fumbling around. And I was like, I may as well just say what's going on. But yeah, let's do
Let's do
recommendation.
recommendations. It is Kevin Costner. Yeah. You
It
you
is
were right.
Costner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. The better Kevin, we'll say.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
I don't
So
know a whole lot about Kevin Kline, but
n-
we'll say he's better. Yeah.
he's in that one movie where he plays a guy who looks just like the president and is like his stand-in. Dave?
Oh, okay. Dave.
Yeah, but I think that's
Sounds
all
great.
right. Yeah, that will not be one of our recommendations for The Adventures of Robin Hood. But what we will be recommending is three things each. At least one of those things will be another movie. The other two things could be more movies, or it could be anything else. It could be books or TV shows or albums or video games or whatever we choose. So we'll each recommend three things. We'll give a brief explanation for why it is that we're recommending it, what its connection to uh, the Adventures of Robin Hood is, and we'll ping pong back and forth. So Brian, whenever you're ready, what is your first recommendation for this movie?
Okay. So for people who like this movie, the good news is that there is more in very much the same vein. There's another Errol Flynn leading role in a Michael Curtiz movie called Captain Blood that is pirates, but very much the same vibe. And it's really fun. So not doesn't quite hit the heights of this one, I would say, but
Mhm.
if you really enjoy this one and just want more of that same sort of thing, it's definitely a good one. So that was my first thought watching this of like,
Nice.
oh, Captain Blood was so good too. Yep.
I've heard good things about Captain Blood. I think I gotta check that out to get on the stay on the Errol Flynn swashbuckling adventures vibe.
Yeah, and you've
I
got several of the same actors in it, actually. Yeah.
Hell
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Round them up,
Yeah, yeah.
baby. Let's go.
Mhm.
I am going to recommend a movie that is about a kind of modern day Robin Hood figure, of course. But for some reason, the one movie that I kept coming back to that is about that kind of figure, um, maybe not necessarily the same one that comes to mind for everyone, but I don't know if you've seen, I think it's like 91 or 92, Christopher Walken in The King of New York.
Oh, yes, I've seen King of New York. That's a good one.
Yeah, that is like one of the cooler like modern translations of a Robin Hood style character, I think.
Yeah, that's neat. That's a good, I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good pull. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
I'll
also
have to
that
check that
Biggie
one out.
song. I think it's The What with Method Man, where he
Oh,
says something along the lines of like, I'm the black Frank White. And for the longest time, I was like, what does he mean by that? Who's Frank White? And then I watched The King of New York and I was like,
that's
Biggie.
Frank White.
That's Frank White, Christopher Walken. And then thinking of the Notorious B.I.G. walking around Bed-Stuy doing his best Christopher Walken impression made me giggle. So
Yeah. Sounds great.
yeah,
All right. My next recommendation, in the spirit of the movie years project, that we talked about, I'll recommend another movie from 1938. Um, and that's one of my favorites from the 30s, Bringing Up Baby with Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn. Classic screwball comedy, so much fun. Yeah, they just knew how to make fun movies in the 30s. I know you've covered The Thin Man on the podcast as well. Another really fun movie. Or maybe that was an article that I had seen. I don't know if you've done Thin Man yet for the
there might have been an
podcast, but
article. I don't
yeah.
know if I've done that yet, but
Okay.
yeah,
Well, Thin Man, in for a good time when you get there, but,
yeah.
yeah, the, Bringing Up Baby, another classic, another great one.
Give us all the fun. Give us all the 1930s fun. We can
Mhm.
we need it. Uh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
people
good
don't
stuff.
think of old movies as very much fun, but I feel like once you watch, like, 5 or 6 of them and sort of get the vibe and get used to, like, the way that they talk and the way that things work, you can get in there and, enjoy it like people would have at the time, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah,
A
I
lot
love
of
that.
fun to be
That
had. Yep.
yeah, let's do it. I love that. I for my next recommendation, um, kind of random, but there's a ton of good swordsmanship in this movie. Obviously,
Ooh.
as any good swashbuckling adventure has. So I was trying to think of other movies that have good displays of swordsmanship, and for some reason, I wanted to pick a movie from Japan, but instead of going with like a cool old school samurai movie or from like Kurosawa or that era, or even like just like straight up samurai genre flick from like the 60s or 70s. I decided to go with a movie that is an adaptation of a manga from like
Oh.
2017. It's not the best movie in the world, but it is a very, very, very fun movie about a dude who is really good with a sword. I'm going to recommend Blade of the Immortal. Pretty bonkers movie. Definitely not like your standard samurai flick, but um, a good swordsman, good swordsmanship. So if you like watching that part of the adventures of Robin Hood, then you might like Blade of the Immortal.
Very neat. Yeah. I know this director. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So you know it's going to be like pretty outrageously violent.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but I like him. He makes, good stuff. Takashi Miike. Yeah.
Yeah.
And makes a lot of movies. I think there are some years where he's made like 20 movies, which is like, how do you do that in a year?
Nuts.
Doesn't make
Yeah.
sense to me. This bursts of creativity, uh the likes of which we don't know.
No.
All right, well, um I gotta anytime I come on here, I gotta recommend something that like no one in the world has ever seen. So
Yes.
going for that for the third one.
We love it.
um I was reminded of a basically the polar opposite style of a medieval movie is like would be this movie. So instead of being like fun, vibrant, larger than life, it's like showing the reality maybe of what it would be like to live in medieval time and have like chain link armor that's uncomfortable to walk around in and like clanking all of the time and stuff. This movie is called Lancelot of the Lake. It's a 70s movie directed by Robert Bresson, um, classical French filmmaker who's thought of as one of the all-time best to ever do it. His 70s movies are a lot lesser seen. They haven't gotten great distribution, though I was able to get the DVD of this from my library. So
Nice. Shout out
can
libraries.
definitely be found around. But yeah, there's a jousting scene in there that's like an interesting counterpoint. Like I feel like his movie is responding to not liking this kind of movie. Basically, he wants to like strip all of the romanticism out of his
Hmm.
movies and make them minimalist and show the reality of things in a way. um and so it's an interesting counterpoint to this, I feel like, where you can see, you know, here's a different mode of filmmaking that's also compelling and interesting, but very much trying to do a different thing with the same setting.
Awesome. I love that. That sounds great. That's kind of like sort of like what Unforgiven is for the Western genre. Or like,
Yeah.
is it the Twilight Samurai with I'm trying to think if that's the right movie, but kind of like, yeah, like stripping away all of the like romantic ideals of the genre. So I would be very interested to check that out. I love when you give us recommendations that like for movies that like four people have seen.
Yeah, I gotta do something like really weird and obscure. If you're
Yeah.
asking me for three recommendations, I can give a couple of more common ones. Though the other ones I did were from the 1930s, so maybe I didn't quite hit the more
No, but still
common
movies that,
ones. But yeah,
that people are are like generally aware of, like a good amount of people have probably seen.
yeah,
But yeah, I love that.
yeah.
That's sweet. I got to check that out. I am going to do the complete opposite and recommend
Ooh,
a movie that probably everyone has seen, but we were talking about how this movie sort of creates the foundation and formula for a lot of things that we see within movies. One of them being the gathering together of a merry group of folks who end up stealing from the rich. In
ooh.
this movie, they maybe don't give to the poor, but they certainly do steal from the rich. I'm going with the George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Steven Soderbergh, Ocean's 11.
Oh, I love Ocean's 11. Very
One of the
formative
most
movie. Yeah.
rewatchable movies of all time.
Yeah, just a good time. Good hang as well. Yeah, very like you said, rewatchable, and you can see where, um, just in terms of creating a crowd pleaser or a movie that's like compelling for and entertaining for a lot of people to watch. It's a good double pairing.
Yeah, we love it. Good stuff, Brian. Before we say goodbye, let's just quickly run through our recommendations. I think we both did three movies because, of
Yeah.
course. So what are the three movies you're recommending for The Adventures of Robin Hood?
Yeah, I've got Captain Blood, Bringing Up Baby, and Lancelot du Lac, or Lancelot of the Lake.
Amazing. I've got uh, King of New York, Blade of the Immortal, and Ocean's 11. seven great movies, including
Mm,
The Adventures of Robin Hood. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, this weekend, if you're not doing anything, maybe fire up all seven of those movies and just have yourself a time. Um, Bryan, thanks again for joining. Always an absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Where can folks find you on the interwebs if they want to hear you talking about movies more,
Mhm.
read your thoughts on movies, all that good stuff? Where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Yeah, absolutely. So I write for Screen Age Wasteland, so I'm a Screen Age contributor. Is that right? Not
I
a
think
screen
so.
ager. That those are the readers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Saw contributor.
um saw contributor. There we
Yeah.
go. I'll get it right one of these times. So you could read my writing. I do some film reviews um over there. I'm also on Letterboxd and Blue Sky, and have that What a Picture podcast that we talked about at the beginning of the episode. So those are all of the ways that I can currently be found.
Amazing. I must say it's good stuff all around. What a Picture is a great listen, a ton of fun. Your letterbox reviews always give me a good smile, and your reviews on Screen Age Wasteland have been great. I think you recently did um, I'm Still Here,
I
uh,
did. Yeah.
that was a great review, and I'm forgetting the name of the Iranian film that you reviewed earlier this year.
Seed of the Sacred Fig. Yeah.
Yes,
That's a good
really,
one.
yeah,
So I'm doing my another guest on your podcast, Stephen Gillespie. We do an annual episode on my show where we talk through our favorite international films of the year, and we do it about mid-year. So I'm doing like my review of trying to get through all of the good international films, mostly that came out in like festivals last year. So that's
amazing,
that's what I'm working through, and most of the I'm through most of the stuff that I need to see. I think I got like 4 or 5 more that are on my list. So yeah.
amazing. Yeah, I mean, the reviews are great, and if anyone is looking for some good international movies to add to the watch list, Bryan has great ones. Read some of his reviews, and you'll definitely want to watch the movies. I know that was the case for me when I read your reviews. So
Well,
uh,
thanks.
we love
Yeah.
it. It's good stuff. Screenagers, as always, thank you for listening. You can, along with Bryan's reviews, there are a ton of other great things to check out on the website. All the lists and open threads and other reviews and whatnot are there for your reading and engaging pleasure. So definitely come hang out with us over there. You can obviously also find all episodes of the Canon podcast there or wherever it is that you listen to your favorite shows. So whatever feed you're listening to us on right now, we will be back here next week with another essential movie. We're going to be talking The Passion of Joan of Arc, which is another great movie that I haven't seen. I'm very much so
Wow.
looking forward to it. Very much so looking forward to that conversation. A newcomer, another new Saw contributor, Val, is going to be joining for that discussion. So make sure you're, right here next week on the same feed for that one. We will see you there. And in the meantime, as always, Screenagers, we'll see you all in the wasteland.